What up, Winbush here, and today I'm excited to show you this highly requested tutorial on how to take the Respawn EA logo animation from Apex Legends Season 3 and animate it with Cinema 4D and After Effects. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Okay, so once again, we're going to get started by creating something like this. So if you play Apex Legends, this is the intro that comes into Season 3. So one of the viewers asked me how to recreate this. I kind of recreated it and made it my own. I have a little bit more details and stuff in here in the cracks. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. I'll show you guys exactly my setup here. So let me close this out. And I already have my logos already set in here. So I have my Respawn logo and I have my EA logo. And all I did was, let me pull these open. So I took like the PNG files off the internet. So I have the EA logo right here. Then I have the Respawn logo. And all I did was bring those into Illustrators and make those into vector files. And then I brought those vector files into Cinema 4D. Just extruded them out with the extrude and then placed them where I wanted them to be. Because in that video, we start on the Respawn logo, then we twist the camera over to the EA logo. And so if you want a deeper explanation on how to build this out, let me know down in the comments and I'll definitely do a separate video for that. But this video, I kind of wanted to just focus on like the Voronoi fracture and how to get the electricity and everything moving through our animation. So to get started, let's start off by making a cube. And this cube is going to be our ground plane. So over here, my objects and my structure, I'm just going to name this one ground. And then for my size, let's say I have these written down. Let me check my notes here. So for my cube size, I want this to be 2000 by 5 and then by 1300. Something like that. Looks pretty good. Okay, cool. So that covers the Respawn logo and the EA logo there. And then I'm going to start by making another cube. And this one is going to be something, we'll get more into that. This is actually going to be how we're going to break up our sections with the Voronoi fracture. But for now, I'm just going to name this one Respawn cube. And then for my my sizing here under object, let's make this one 500 by like 100 and then by 150. And that's pretty much just to cover up the Respawn logo. So if I go to my top view, you can see how much real estate is covering. I could probably even move this over a little bit. And then for my ground, let's say for my coordinates, we want to move this over. Let's do like 600. Because the camera's going to be in pretty close, in the Voronoi fracture, depending on your computer specs, could get pretty heavy. So we want to use only the real estate that we're really going to be moving our camera along towards. So for the Y on this one, let's do like 2.5 just to bring it up a little bit. All right, cool. Let's just work in the top view for this section because I'm going to make a cylinder and I'm going to make that over top of our EA logo here. So I can actually just drag my cylinder down here. Try to line this up to where my EA logo is. And this is going to break the ground around the EA logo. So radius, let's make this like 100. Yeah, so that's a good radius around the EA logo there. And then for height, let's do like 50. I think the coordinates should be good. I'm just going to round these off a little bit. Yeah, so somewhere around there should be pretty good. So now we have our cylinder. I'm going to name this one EA cylinder. So we have our cylinder that's going to break the ground around the EA. And we have our Respawn cube that's going to break the ground around the Respawn logo here. So now let's get into Voronoi fracture. So I'm going to go back to my perspective view. And over here under MoGraph, I'm going to go under Voronoi fracture. And I'm actually going to click and drag my ground under here. And as you can see, we have a whole bunch of grounded segments here. They're all broke up and everything. We want to come over to our sources. And then under point generator distribution, let's make this amount about, let's say 1,000. Let's start with 1,000, see what that gets us. And then actually if I come over here and click off the eye, it turns off the points and everything. Just give us a little bit cleaner perspective of what we're doing here. So that looks pretty good. We don't need it to be super small because that's what these shapes are going to do here. So what these shapes are going to do is break up our fracture even more and give us more precise objects to work with. So the next step is, let's come over to Respawn Cube and drag that into our sources here, right under point generator. And as you can see, it made our cube kind of transparent here. And so under our creation method, I want to change this to volume. And you can see it moved it around a little bit, and that's because our point amount is only like 20. So if we bring this up to like 10,000, now you can see we have 10,000 points in here. If I come over to the eyeball right here, click that off, we can actually get a better view of how much is fracturing in that particular area. So if I go back to my top view, we can see underneath there's our Respawn logo, and it has all these tiny little fractures around it. So that's going to give us a little bit more detail in that area there for our breakup there. And then I want to do the same thing for the EA logo. So let's bring our cylinder over here. Same thing, make this a volume. And I could do my amount for this one a little bit less. Let's say 300. There we go. I'm going to turn this off. So something around there looks pretty good. And then in our animation as well, like we have the electricity, we have the brake hit right here. Then we have like a brake come over here. They kind of connect to the EA, and we have the electricity and everything. So we're just going to make a connecting brake line right here. So let me go make another cube. I'm going to switch this down a little bit. Cool, and then let's angle it a little bit there. Around 35 looks pretty good. So we're just going to have it hit the corner right here, break the ground all the way over here to our EA logo. So I can click and drag this out a little bit. Let's round this out. Alright, cool. And then same thing. Actually, I'm going to name this one, let's see, corner crack or line crack cube. And then go back to our Voronoi fracture. Let's drag this under here like so, and you can see now our cube is transparent here. And so let's make this one a volume of, I gotta click on it first. And actually I spelled Lin crack. I forgot to add the E. Alright, cool. So I'm back in Voronoi fracture. Let's go under line crack. Make this a volume. And make this like 500 points. Boom. There we go. If I actually come over here, back into my hierarchy window, I can click all these, hold down the Alt key, and double click, double click, double click. And so now we don't see the transparency shapes, we just see what we have going on with our fracture. So now the next step is we want to add some effectors in here so that we can actually start to break up the ground and everything. So first, let's work with the respawn area first. So this is the first one we're going to see. So if I come back under MoGraph, let's start with the plane effector. And I'm going to rename this one Respawn Plane. I didn't spell spawn right. No, what's up with my spelling tonight? Double N's. Nope. Alright, cool. So now we have our plane effector. It's called Respawn Plane. I'm going to come over here into my position. And for my, let's say for my Y, let's make this -8. And you can see it's not affecting anything here yet. And that's because I didn't have Voronoi fracture selected whenever I went to add the effector. But we can easily go under effectors here. So I have my Voronoi fracture selected, come under effectors. And I can bring that over here. And you can see now it pushed our ground all the way down. But let me click this off so you can see it actually affected the entire thing. So the way that we could get it to only affect this area right here where the respawn logo is, we can actually start using fields. So if I come back to my respawn plane here, then click on fall off. Let's go and make a box field. And now you can see we actually have control over the area that we want to fracture. So let's just grab these points and drag these around. And so I don't know if you could really see it or not. So these outside, these handles right here, this controls the overall break. And then there's inside handles right here, and this controls the fall off. So we could just have like a nice even, or not even, but a nice fall off here that goes out to the edges, like so. We can even bring this in a little bit. Okay, we really just wanted to crack around our logo there. So something like that looks pretty good, but it's all even. It's pushing everything down even. So let's add a little bit of randomness to this. So I'm going to click back on my Voronoi Fracture. Let's go under MoGraph, come down to Effector, and let's actually make a random effector. And as you can see, it exploded everything. That's because we have to add a field to this one as well. So actually, before I do anything, I like keeping everything organized because it can get pretty messy. So I'm just going to rename this one Respawn Random, so I know exactly what this is affecting. And then I'm actually going to take this box field, hold down Control, left click, and bring it under here. And you can see it didn't really affect anything yet. And that's because under our fall off window, we have to actually click and drag and bring this in. So now we have the same fall off that we have for our plane effector. So now let's go back to our, let's say our effector, no, our parameters. And let's start messing with these parameters. So let's zero everything out. Now let's zoom in here so we can see what we're doing. So let's say, let's bring our Y to like 2. And then our X to 1. So we're just adding a little bit of randomness here. You can see it's already looking pretty good here. Then for our scale, I'm going to click on Uniform Scale and Absolute Scale. Let's bring this down a little bit. So whenever the ground cracks, it just like some of the scale is off a little bit there. So that's looking pretty cool there. Then for our rotation, let's really just rotate these. See, like 225, somewhere around there. All right, cool, and somewhere around there. It looks pretty good. So whenever everything hits, it's going to make this exact break here under our Respawn logo. So next, let's break up our EA logo. So I'm going to take these two, my Respawn Random and my Respawn Plane. I'm going to select both of these. I'm going to hold down Control, left click, and just drag down. And that's going to make a copy of these. And so I'm going to rename this one EA Random. And then this one is going to be EA Plane. Cool, like so. And then I'm going to take these, let me go to my top view, because I'm just going to drag them over to where our EA logo is going to be at. Do I have both of those selected there? Cool, so I'm going to drag this down to where the EA logo is at. And then instead of having it be a box field, let me delete both of these actually. Delete those. And then I'm going to go back to fall off under my plane. And I'm going to use a cylinder field. So there we go. We have a cylinder. We could just bring this out a little bit. Let's bring the fall off out a little bit. And it's not affecting anything yet. And that's because we have to bring our effectors into our Voronoi Fracture. But I'm just getting this set up here so that when we do, we'll see everything that's affected. So let me go back to my perspective here. Click on Voronoi Fracture, come down under Effectors, and I'm going to bring in my EA Plane. And you can see it pushed the ground down here. And actually, let me go back to my fields. Let me just drag this out a tiny bit more so it's not scraping our logo at all. And then I'm going to take and hit Control, left click, and drag under Random. And so now I have the same fields for both of these. And then remember, I have to go back to my fall off and just left click and drag this over here. Then go to my Voronoi Fracture, come down to my effectors, bring my EA Random. Now you can see that now this ground is all broke up. but we don't need it to be as extreme. Like in Apex Legends animation, whenever it comes over to the EA logo, the ground's already broke up, but it's not really to this extreme here. So let's just bring our fracture down a tiny bit, somewhere around there. And we're also going to have a ground underneath here, and so it's not going to be completely transparent. But that looks pretty decent right there. So now the last one is a crack that kind of goes over to the EA logo here. And so I'll do the same thing. I'm going to shift, select both of these for my respawn. Just going to hold down control, drag, make another copy. I'm going to name this one crack. And then crack plane. Alright, cool. And then select both of these. Go into my top view. I'm just going to try to line these up as good as I can. So bring these over here like so. And then actually I'm going to delete the one that's under my random, because I'll work with the one that's in plane first. Make sure I get this all lined up, and then I'll just copy and paste what I do here. So you bring this over here. You don't need as much fall off. So we just want to make sure that we're really only covering the ground here. So the best plan is let's bring it into our Voronoi fracture and see how it affects the ground. So now let me go to my crack plane. I'm going to drag that into my effectors here. And that looks pretty decent right there. So I'm going to hold down control, left click, drag it under random. I'm going to bring this into my effectors, into my Voronoi fracture. And I got so I have to go to my fall off, bring my box field, bring it in here. And now it's only affecting this area here. So now we have our ground all broke up and everything. So it's going to start here, slam down with the respawn logo, crack over to the EA logo, and then we screen out the black. So let's what do we want to do first? Actually, I could just add my textures on now. I actually have a broken concrete texture already in here that I'm using from the Megascans library, but you could use any texture that you want. I tried to pick one that resembled the Apex Legend animation the closest. So I'm just going to bring this under my Voronoi fracture. Then I'm just going to make it cubic. And if I go over, let me make sure I have redshift selected. Nope. So I'm using redshift. So let me click on this now. Let's see what my render is looking like. Give us a second to come in. And I don't have any lights or anything in here yet, but that's not looking too bad. So one thing I'm noticing is the transparency here between the cracks. So what I'm going to do is let's add a plane underneath our respawn here. Something like that. And then I'm going to drag it down underneath. And I'm just going to click and drag this texture under my plane as well. And then let me see what this looks like now. Give this a second to come through. And we should have, yeah, so now we have our concrete break-in with our concrete, no black holes or anything. So that's looking pretty decent there. And I'm not sure if I said it at the top of this video here, but what I'm working at 60 frames per second. I just like that frame rate. It's nice and smooth. So this project file is working at 60 frames per second. My project length is 250 frames. And so let's start animating this ground crack. This ground crack here. So what I'm going to do first is I want to do the slam for the respawn logo here. So I'm going to take my respawn logo and I'm going to take my respawn effectors and I'm going to make them into a group. So I'm going to select all three of these, come over to object and do group object. And then if I look from a side view here, if I click on, actually let me rename this to respawn so I know what group this is. I don't know why I can't spell respawn today. There we go, like that. So if I drag this up and then slam down, you can see the ground cracks And it looks like it's cracking before it even the Respawn logo hits. So let me come under my fields here. And I'm just going to drag these up a little bit closer to where my Respawn logo is. There we go. So something like that. So let's say we're going to do maybe like a 15 frame slam. So I'm going to take my group here that I just made, go under coordinates, and for my Y axis here, I'm going to click that for keyframe. And then actually let me bring a camera in too, so I know how to bring it up. So I'm going to bring in the camera, and let's zero this out. So I'm going to do X at 0. Let's say our Y will be at like 700 centimeters up. Then my Z, I'm going to zero this out. And then for my rotation, let's zero this out. Actually, we want to do -90 because we're looking down at the ground. So there we go. We're all centered up and everything. And now let me bring my EA, or not my EA, my Respawn logo. And I'm going to drag this up towards the camera on the Y axis. And then the original animation that didn't come from behind camera is like already in the scene. So somewhere around there, it just starts really close. So let me keyframe that. And if I click play, you see we hit and the ground cracks when it hits. And now it doesn't, this ground doesn't crack immediately. I know it stays on for a little bit here. So let's say at like, let's say at like 45 frames, we want to have this ground crack. So let me click back off my camera so I don't move my position there. And I'm in perspective view. So what I want to do here is I'm going to take my crack random and my crack plane. I'm going to select this and I'm going to make object out of this. So our group object here under object. And I'm just going to rename this one crack. Crackety crack crack. And then I'm going to come over here to my null. Click on this. And let's move this null over to like the beginning of where we want our crack to be at. So somewhere around here, because I'm gonna control it with the scale. And so let me show you right now what I'm talking about. So this should work like this. Let me see. Yep. So I might have to, what I want to happen is, doesn't look like it's going to work like that. So let me take these out. Let me get this lined up first. So it might be because of the rotation here. So I'm going to take this. Let me rotate it. We're at like -35. So now it should be lined up. So I'm going to bring this back under my crack object here. Now if I move it, yeah, there we go. So I'm going to zero out somewhere around my X and my Z. Actually, let me just do all three. So for my scale here, for my object, I'm going to make my X, Y, and Z 0. I'm going to keyframe it right here at 45. And then I'm going to bring this over, let's say about 90 frames. And then I'm just going to click 1 for my X, Y, and Z. Now if we play this, we should have it slam. And then it's going to crack the ground here. And then the EA should already be cracked. And so now we just want to work on a camera movement. So I'm going to click back on my camera here. So let's say we slam. The ground cracks right there. Let's say maybe, because we need time for the electricity to come on. So let's say maybe at like 110, we're going to have the camera start to move. So I'm going to do my X and my Z. And then I'm going to do my rotation on my H. So I have these clicked here. Let's say we want to do maybe like a 40 frame move. So let's move this to like -35. And then bring my camera over to the EA, the center screen. So somewhere like that. Just even these numbers out. Alright, cool. So now we're going to keyframe these and we should be good to go. So let me see. Slam. We're going to have the ground crack. We're going to have the electricity start to come over here. And then we move over to the EA. And then actually let me move my keyframes over because we have this scene that's 250 frames, and I know there was like a good bit of time in between here that we had to have like the electricity come on. So I'm going to move these frames more towards the end. We can actually do a slower move. So I'm select my move frames here. Somewhere like that. And I know my scene's going to be more than 250 frames, but there's no need to like render more than what we actually need. So what I'll do in After Effects, I'm actually going to do a time relapse or a freeze frame at the end. So once it hits 250 frames, then I can freeze it from that point on, and then it's going to be on an EA logo, and we could just do like a zoom within After Effects, or not a zoom, but like a scale, because the render times, the less frames you have to render, the better. So it looks like we have a pretty good move there. So now let me go back to my scene here, and let me go to my EA logo. I'm actually going to come under tags, and I'm going to add an external compositing tag. And what that's going to do is once we bring it into After Effects, it's going to give us a null point for this area. So in case we want to use this as a point of reference to add any type of effects or anything, or any type of extra layers in After Effects, we have the 3D representation of where it's supposed to be at. And I'm going to do the same thing for the Respawn Entertainment as well. So let me, actually I don't want to do it for the Respawn Entertainment because that one's animated. So what I'm going to do is let me make a null. I'm going to create a null and zero it out. It's in the exact center here. And I'm just going to name this one reference, or Respawn reference. And I spelled Respawn wrong again. Let me see. Cool. And I'm just going to add the tag to this one. Cool. So now whenever I bring this into After Effects, it's going to bring in our camera information, these null points, and we should be able to do some compositing from there. So now let's work on our lighting a little bit. So I like starting off with like a dome light. Let me see. I might have some HDRs already in here. Let me get a bridge actually. Yep. So I have my lighting probes here. Let's see, which one do we want to use? Something that's like a daytime. Let's see what this water bucket trail HDR looks like. So let me drag this down here. Cool, and I'm just going to drag this into my path here. Give that a second to kick in. Then for enable background, I'm going to click this off, enable alpha channel. We don't really need an alpha channel, but just in case. So now let me go to my render view, see what this looks like. And we're also going to add a puzzle map for our logos as well, so that we're able to separate those in After Effects and do some compositing on our concrete layer here, because in the EA logo it's kind of blowing out. So yeah, that looks pretty decent. Let me see what the shadows look like if I pull this up a little bit. I might actually want to add a spotlight in the area just to kind of highlight that area. So let me come over to my dome lights, not my dome lights, my spotlight. Come over to my side view. Actually no, let me do an area light, because then I can make it into like a square. So I have my area light here. And bring this up a little bit. I'm just going to rotate this down so it's facing our Respawn logo. So let's do -90, something like that. I'm just going to reshape this a little bit. And it might be overkill. Let me check. Might need to bring this up a tad bit. Let me see what the render looks like first. Yeah, because we kind of want that blowing out look. At least that's the way it had it in the EA or on the game animation. So let me bring this up a tad bit. Somewhere around there, maybe. I could probably bring the intensity down. Let's say maybe like 50. Yeah, something like that. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll copy it. I'm just going to bring it over top of the EA logo as well. So we should be good there. Then what else do we need? Oh yeah, we need to make these into puzzle mats. So I'm going to come over to my EA logo, come over to tags, come over to Redshift tags. Let's go to our object ID. Then I'm just going to name this one 1. Then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hold down Control and just bring it to my Respawn logo as well. So now I have a mat for my logos. And then just for good taste, let's do it for our manufacturer as well. And for the plane underneath. And like, let's make these ones. I guess I gotta select one at a time. So we'll do this one as a 2. So now I have a mat for the concrete ground just in case. And then I am using Redshift, and with the latest version, they just added this this auto sampling. So to find that, we come under System, we go to Experimental Options, Enable Automatic Sampling. So I'm gonna click that, and this only works with brute force. It doesn't work for Radiance Cache. So I'm just gonna use brute force here. So now I don't have to mess with any of the settings here for the max samples and stuff like that. It's automatically going to pick the samples that are best used for that frame. So I used it earlier and it worked out pretty good, and it's pretty fast too. It doesn't give us long render times at all. So now let me come under my AOV manager. I'm going to make a puzzle mat. Come under here, under object ID. For the red one, we'll make this 1. For the green ID, we'll make this 2. And then if I come over here under my render settings, let me pull up my puzzle mat, and you'll see how we have it separated out. So we should have our logo be red. Yeah, so our logo is red and our background is green. And I'll show you exactly how to get this punched out in After Effects there. But I think that's everything that we have to cover here in Cinema 4D at least. So we have our animation, we have it slam down, we have the ground crack, then we have it move over to the EA logo. So I'll show you how to do the electricity part and how to do all the compositing in After Effects. But yeah, all you have to do to render this out, make sure you come over here under Save. I like using the Open EXRs. Then I always click Alpha Channel just in case, good habit to have. Then for my multipass, I'm just going to use a PNG. And then under compositing project file, I just click everything on here. I'm going to be sending all the data out to After Effects. I already have this rendered because it took me about maybe like an hour to render this earlier. So I didn't want to waste any time. I rendered it out whenever I was figuring out how to do this earlier. So now we're just going to jump into After Effects and we're going to get everything all wrapped up. I'll see you on the flip side. Okay, so now I have After Effects open. I have my composition here. I'm actually working at 3440 by 1440 because I'm working at ultra wide screen. Like I said before, working at 60 FPS. And I have imported here my original animation with the puzzle mat. So let me drag my puzzle mat down in here into my composition. I'm going to select these two and right click, and I'm going to hit, where is it at? So I'm looking for a freeze frame on the end one. There we go. It's under time. So I want to go to freeze on last frame. Then I could drag these. Oh, it automatically drags it out. But my overall animation is around 6 minutes. Remember when I set it up in After Effects, it was only 250 frames, which is around 4 seconds. So I extended it about 2 more seconds there so that we have time to see the lightning and everything go around the EA logo. So I'm going to be referencing my original file here. Like I said, I figured this out earlier in the week. So this is what the file that ended up with looks like. And this is what we're starting off with. And if you notice here, I have a lot more detailed cracks in here. I'm actually bringing these in from Megascans, and I'll show you how to composition this as well. But let's see where we should get started. Actually, let's start working with our puzzle mats. So I like color coordinating these. I'm going to make this one red, and then I'm going to turn this one off. I'm just going to make it dark green here. And what I want to do now is come over to my effects and presets. I'm going to click set, and I'm going to go to set matte, and then let me drag this over so you can see it. But under here, from where it says take matte from layer, we actually want to bring it in from our puzzle matte here, and then we want to select the red channel, and this is the channel that's going to be for our background, and our green channel is what's going to be for our logos here. So all I did was duplicate this layer. I made this green here just so it's green in the timeline. Then I'm gonna go make this one green channel. Now I have my Respawn logo here. And then now let me come back over to effects and presets, and I'm gonna type in levels. And I'm just gonna drag my levels over just to kind of brighten this up and blow it out a little bit, like how it is in the original animation. Somewhere around there. And you can see we have some ground, our alpha channel is in here, so I'm just going to drag my original animation down here just to fill that in. Let me copy my levels, and then I'm just going to paste this underneath. Maybe I could darken it down a little bit. There we go, just to add some contrast there. Then I'm actually going to have to freeze this one at the end too, so on freeze on last frame. And there we go, we have our mattes all in here now. So what I want to do now is, let's start with the lightning. So for the lightning, I'm actually using it's a free plugin from Video Copilot. It's called Saber. So if you go to Video Copilot, look up Saber. It's a free After Effects plugin. It's pretty cool. So let me show you how to bring this in and have it move with our camera. So I'm going to start by making a solid. I'll make it a black solid. Make size of composition, should be fine. So I want to come over here, right here, and make this a 3D layer. And then I want to hit P on my keyboard to bring up the position. And let me bring it under the position of the Respawn logo. So I hit P again. And this is the null that we brought in from After Effects, or from Cinema 4D. Remember I said that it's going to give us our positioning in After Effects. So I'm going to hit Control C, then hit Control V on my black solid. And now I dragged it over. And I'm going to hit R on my solid to bring up the rotation. Let me see which one it is. I think it's the Y or the X. Yeah, so I'm going to make my X rotation 90. And if I zoom out a little bit, you can see it's a little bit large. So I'm going to hit S on my keyboard, shortcut for scale. And I'm going to bring this down a little bit. And I want it just enough to cover up. So we didn't have lightning on the Respawn logo. It starts here. So let me drag this out my timeline to see where the crack's at. And we're going to wait to see where the camera moves at. Somewhere around here. And all I want to do is line up. I want to line up my black solid with that crack there. The criggity crack. So let me hit R my rotate here. And I believe it should be the same. So if I hit negative 35, yep, it lines right up. I'm going to hit S again. Let's just scale this out a tad bit. Like so. And I'm going to name this one Crack Laser. Let me bring this over here. Let's bring this down. And let's add the saber to it. So if I add saber, you can see that it's giving us this saber bar here. And I believe the one that I selected before was Arc Reactor. And then I just made it orange. Somewhere like that. And what's cool about Saber is, let me hit T and bring up transparency. I'm actually going to make a bunch of little masks in here, a bunch of splines, and then I can have Saber actually go along those splines. So we don't want our spline to be, we want to make it look like it's going underneath some of these cracks. So if I hit escape, actually I think I need to click off and then click back on to start up a new spline. I'm just going to make the spline go all the way across these cracks here. And we're just kind of faking it so it makes it look like it's dipping underneath some of these cracks here. So that's why I'm making multiple splines here. So wherever it looks like it would dip underneath, that's where I'm stopping the crack at. So somewhere like that. Under customized core, we want to come under layer mask, and now we have our saber going along our layer mask. Let me drag this up and actually just screen it, and there we go. So now we have our laser going underneath our cracks here. You can fine tune these any way that you need. You just click on the tip there and drag it over like so. And that should be good for that. And then I'm just going to hit Control D, and I'm just going to name this one. Oops. Hit the Enter key. Name this one EA laser. I'm going to hit M on my keyboard to bring up the mask. I'm going to delete all these masks because I want to make new masks going around our EA logo. So I'm just going to click. Actually, I could get it more precise. So I'm going to hit P on my keyboard, go to my EA null here, hit P on my keyboard to bring up this position, hit Control C, then hit Control V, and now let me drag this out a little bit. Actually, I want to even my scale, so let's do 10. Actually, let me do 12 maybe. Yeah, somewhere around there. And I'm just going to make this a little bit transparent so that I can make a laser going around our EA logo now. So same exact thing as before. I'm just going to hit my pen tool here. I'm just going to make random lasers around the EA logo. Something like that. So I'm just going to do quick and fast just so you guys can kind of see how I built this out. So yeah, I'll put this up on my Gumroad for free so you guys can actually play around with the project file as well, if you want to do that, or you can just render it out straight. Do anything you want. I'll put the After Effects file up there along with the Cinema 4D file so you guys can play around with that. Just make sure you go to the Video Copilot site. Make sure you download the Saber plugin so that you can use this. Oops. So make sure I have this selected. Alright, cool. So yeah, I'll just do something like that. Let me add one more in here. Alright, cool. So now we have our twists and turns, our lasers going around the EA logo. So now we just need to animate these on. So let me bring these transparency back up and then go down the screen. There we go, something like that. And then so to animate the lasers on, let's see, we have, let me turn these off just so I can see our animation again. So we have it slammed down. We have the lasers, or we have the ground crack right here. So around this frame should be good to start the lasers to animate on for the crack. So I'm going to turn back on my crack laser. Come over to my saber here. And I believe it's under, let me see, start offset. So that should, yeah, so that offset's how you animate these on. So I'm going to go to my end offset. I'm going to make this one 0. And then click a keyframe. Click this for keyframe. Then maybe drag this out a little bit. Make this 100. So that animates on. And then let's go through our animation a little bit. So let's say about here is where we want our EA logo to animate on. So I'm going to turn this crack on, or this laser on. Let me make this end offset here down to 0. Keyframe this. Just drag it out here. Click 100. And we should be good to go. And the saber automatically adds like the flicker and everything in here. You have all these different settings, like if you want to bring up the glow intensity or if you want to change the core size, you have all those there as well. So, you know, play around with it, get it to your liking. And if I see this right, I might have forgot to bring a plane underneath here. Let me click on my alpha. Actually, I'm not going to see it because of this. Let me see. Yeah, it looks like I have an alpha channel under here. So that should be an easy fix. Let me see. I should have my let me take an albedo layer, and I'm just going to bring this underneath. So this is just the rock layer that I'm using for the texture here. I actually brought it into After Effects just in case I needed it, which I do. So I'm just going to fill this in. Let's add a levels to it. Kind of bring this up a little bit. There you go. So something like that is decent. So now what I want to do is, let me drag this back over. Let's look at our original one. So I have all these really fine cracks in here. And like I said, I actually got this from the Quixel Megascans library. So let me show you what I did here. This is exactly what I pulled from Megascans. So all I did was I brought these in underneath my logo here. So I made a pre-comp for it because I have the albedo with opacity. And so I knocked that out using the Luma channel here. So then I'll bring in my pre-comp here into my scene. And I'm going to make this into a 3D layer. And then I'm going to do it the same way that I did the lasers. Let me bring these up. So I'm going to go to my respawn null, hit Control C, go to my crack here, hit Control V, and then hit R on my keyboard, make my X rotation 90, then I'm going to hit S. Let's just bring this down and fit it into our scene here. You can see that's already looking pretty cool. So we just want to blend this in a little bit. So I'm going to drag my levels in here as well. But before I start messing with my levels, let me type in hue. And I'm actually just going to bring down the saturation on this a little bit. Actually, let's just bring it down all the way. So I go to my master saturation, bring this all the way down. Now I can start messing with the levels to kind of make it blend in a little bit better. So I like how that's looking there. Let me line this up a little bit. Try to fill it in with the cracks there. So it makes it look pretty natural there. And it just, like, you know, like whenever we had our textures in Cinema 4D, it looks decent, but it doesn't look the best. So these little details here is really what insinuates our animation here and makes it look a little bit more realistic. So what I could do now is whenever we have our logo hit and crack the ground, you see right now like it's already cracked, and then this is cracking here. So what I want to do is I want to have this crack at the same time so it looks like it's splitting off cracks at the corners and everything. So I'm going to animate this one first, and then I'm just going to hit Control D and copy it and move it around on my logo here. So let me go back to my effects and presets. Let me come down to my transitions, and I believe it was called a line sweep. Yeah, something like this. And it happened so fast that we could use a line sweep to animate this on and off. So let me go my completion. Yeah, and you can see what the line sweep is doing. There's no gradient on it, but like I said, we're going to animate it within a few frames. So it's going to happen so fast, it's not going to really matter. So instead of 180 for my direction, let me do 0. Alright, cool. And I could probably even move it over maybe like -17. So I'm going to bring my completion up to 100. And then let's move this keyframe over, or let's move this over before the crack. So around frame 16 to 17 is when it first cracks. So I'm going to make a keyframe on frame 16. Then I'm going to go over like 2 frames. Yeah, 2 frames. And then hit 0. So now let me hit 0 and let me play this back. Let's see what happens here. So this is going to fly in, hit the ground, and then it should crack. And it should, I mean, it's only a couple of frames here, so it should look pretty decent. Yeah, so it looks pretty natural. And then once we add the shake and everything as well, you're not even really going to see it. See? And so from here, all we do is come to that layer, hit Control D. Let's just move it around our logo a little bit, even mess around with the scale. So I'm going to hit R for rotation. Let's rotate this maybe like so. And then I can hide this. Because we're only using one, you just want to kind of vary it up a little bit so it doesn't look like you're repeating. So something like that. I'm not going to go too crazy with it. I mean, I'll give you the project file so you can play around with it. And then let me hit S on my keyboard. There we go, something like that. And then if you do have a Megascans account, I mean, there's a whole bunch of these different cracks. So just for this example, I'm only using a 1. But if you're going to use this for an actual job, you might want to vary it up and use different cracks on there, just so you add a little bit of variety. But that gives you the idea of how I did the ground crack there. So I guess next we could kind of do the camera shake. The easiest way for me to do the camera shake, like I know a lot of times people will grab like this, make a pre-comp and then manually use keyframes, but I do have the Boris FX camera shake. So if I come over here, type in shake, I actually have the Sapphire Distort shake from Boris FX. So let me click right click, make an adjustment layer. Now I'm going to add shake. And you can see it already jumped. And I don't need it to go that high. Let me actually go to load presets. Okay, cool. So yeah, we have a bunch of different options here. We have bear goggles. We have concussions. I'm not sure this is going to play out. Might be too big since I'm working at a high resolution. So I might not get good playback, but yeah, you get an idea of how much it's moving. So that's with the bear goggles. We have a concussion that's going to add kind of like a, it looks like chromatic aberration. I think that's how you say it. We have earthquake. These are a bunch of presets that we have in here. I'll probably just go with earthquake. So something like that. So I would just have it shaking like that. And then I would have it taper off. So maybe at like 45 frames, 50 frames. I go to my adjustment layer, hold down the Alt key, hit the backspace or the back tilt. There we go. And so from there, it should line back up. And I know you can notice around the corners here how we have, like whenever it's shaking, we should be able to have that tile. Let me see if this will work. And if this doesn't work, what I can always do is just make a new composition. So I click and dragged it under my new composition. And you can see, yeah, it's really cropping here on the sides. So I'm just going to hit S on my keyboard. And I'm just going to scale it up just a couple. So let's see what 101 if we get away with that. No, let's bring up to 102. So that way, now we don't have to worry about what's happening on the sides there. So we have our camera shake. We have a stop. We have our neon lights. And what happened here? No, actually I should extend these out. So I'm just going to click on these. Go to time. Freeze on last frame. Now when I play it back, yeah, so it's not going to jump off. So then we have our neon lights. Animate on. We drag over to the EA. And we have these neon lights come on. So that's a basic rundown of how I did it. Like I added a few more things like exposure, you know, just a little things to add in a little bit more detail, but that's the gist of it, how to get the ground crack, how to add the detailed cracks, and how to get the laser in there, which I think is what you really wanted to see. And so from here, it's just all about the fine details. You know, you could use like Magic Bullet looks, you could use exposure, you could bring in some stock footage to add like dust and stuff like that in there. It's all up to you how you want to do it. But like I said, I'll put these files up on my Gumroad, and then I'll link them in my description or in the comments so that you guys can download this for free and play around at your leisure. So hopefully this helped you guys out. Like I said, I'm going to take my Cinema 4D project and my After Effects project, and I'm going to link it down in the comments below so you guys can play around with that, render it out, you know, see exactly how I built everything and follow along with the tutorial. And so if this did help you out, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. And until next time, keep creating. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.